Letitia defeated again. And this one's a doozy, guys. This one is a big, big deal. Welcome to the program. I am Trish Regan. It's good to have you here. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. Unbelievable. Judge Chutkan just coming out, like within the last hour, rejecting the call from Democrat AGs all over the country for a temporary restraining order blocking DOJ's access to federal data. Now, this is different than actually what we saw yesterday, right? It's coming in layers here. This is pretty bad for them. Okay, this is pretty bad because she's out there, Letitia James, saying no one elected Elon Musk. They can't have access to this. And the judge is like, you actually really haven't shown us why he shouldn't have access. I mean, he's an employee, right, of the federal sort of government. Donald Trump has asked him to do this and lead this charge. Therefore, how can you say this? Here's Letitia, grandstanding the other day, having this total, complete meltdown. Just wait till what she's going to do now.
No one elected Elon Musk and his minions, and no one has allowed him to have access to this information. This is a violation of the separation of powers. The United States Congress, the United States Senate, has the sole discretion in having the power of the purse, and not Elon Musk. We are here today to seek a preliminary injunction to stand up against those forces who believe that they can unilaterally have power and have control, all in the hands of the President of these United States.
So much for that, Letitia. Maybe you should have actually refined your legal arguments a little bit more before you charge forward, trying to present this one against Judge Chutkan. And this is, to remind you guys, a Biden appointee coming forward and saying, no, you didn't prove, basically, that this was a problem. There was no harm that you could really show. I mean, they wanted to say, okay, there's no way that Elon Musk can possibly access government information systems at the Office of Personal Management, the Department of Education, the Department of Labor, Department of HHS, Health and Human Services, Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, I go on, Commerce. And they say, this isn't right. This is violation of our privacies. But guess what? The judge said, you guys didn't show that you're going to actually suffer imminent, irreparable harm absent a temporary restraining order. So they wanted this temporary restraining order because already, right, the judge, this happened yesterday, had decided that she wasn't going to rule on this overall. So they came back and said, no, we need this temporary restraining order. This is what just went down within the last 24 hours. This happened in the last couple hours, remember?
He's tasked with the Department of Government Efficiency, DOJ, Elon Musk. A federal judge has just declined to issue an order halting Elon Musk and DOJ from accessing federal data and slashing personnel. Attorneys general from 14 states are attempting to stop Musk and DOJ from accessing data in 7 federal agencies and from firing or putting on leave employees in those agencies. U.S. court.
Boom. Okay. So that was about 24 hours ago or so. And then this is like fresh, hot off the presses, the latest and greatest. I mean, my gosh. I will tell you this, in some ways it's really, really good that Donald Trump had that time, if you would, to be on the sidelines. Because during that time on the sidelines, what we found is that his team refined all their legal arguments and they're coming ready and prepared, able to do all this stuff. And you've got Letitia James, who told us she was ready for this moment, right? Did we not have to hear that over and over again? She's not ready. She was never ready because you know what? She's not smart enough. God, I won't say it.
With other Democratic AGs across this country to make sure that we would be ready to respond to any attempt to roll back our rights. So here we are. We've studied their platforms. We've identified certain possibilities, fact patterns. We've created contingency plans. So no matter what the next administration throws at us, we're ready.
Yeah, or so you thought. Again, Judge Chutkan rejecting calls from Democrat AGs, including one Letitia James, to put a temporary restraining order on DOJ, which means DOJ can move forward with these mass firings as they try and slim down the government to make it more nimble and ready. And no, it's not against the Constitution, Letitia.
Payments to the state of New York and to states all across this nation. It is unacceptable, unconstitutional, ultra-vires. They have exceeded their authority. And so it's important that attorneys general representing our respective states stand up and enforce the rule of law, because Elon Musk, individuals at the Treasury, and the President of these United States is not above the law. And we will continue.
Okay, you continue, but I'm just going to point something out. You're not above the law either. And you know what? There is a law. There is a law that enables the federal government, that would be Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 of the Constitution. There is this little law that says the U.S. government, the feds, are in charge of the U.S. border. And hey, Letitia, just in case you had any doubt whatsoever, just to remind you of this little thing called the Supremacy Clause, right? The Supremacy Clause, which puts the federal government as the supreme law of the land. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. And by the way, the states can go on and on and on about all their different laws as they pertain to immigration, but it gets you right back to the fact that the federal power most definitely has the final say, if you would, the final say when it comes to immigration. All of this really coming to a head. I want to play some sound. This actually is of Jonathan Turley, who's a really, really smart guy when it comes to constitutional law. And he was talking about this issue as we got the initial wave of news on Fox just yesterday. Let's listen in.
Where do you think this all goes next? I mean, this seems to be the moment for Doge. How will it go legally?
Well, I love the fact that one of these arguments occurred on President's Day. It's a sort of reminder that we actually do have a president. There's someone who is in charge of the executive branch. And you have states and judges, that is a few, that have seemed to have forgotten that. But you're now beginning to see judges come to a more sober realization. I've been mystified by many of these challenges. In my view, the president has this authority. They can see these records. It's a bizarre type of argument, Sandra, sort of the Bernie Madoff approach to government efficiency. You can go ahead and reform, but don't look at the books. I mean, they obviously need to look at the receipts. They need to look at where the money has gone in order to make these judgments, and they seem to be finding a great deal of waste. And I think that judges that aggressively try to prevent that are likely to be reversed. And Sandra, I think that when they got Judge Chutkan, who is viewed as not exactly supportive of President Trump, they thought this would be a slam dunk. But even Judge Chutkan, they said, look, I don't understand. Where's my authority here, and where's the imminent harm?
It's incredibly telling the way the judge responded here. Here's the words of the judge on the lawsuit from the 14 states, Jonathan, challenging Elon Musk and Doge, saying, quote, the building will be demolished and there will be something that can't be undone. The things that I'm hearing are serious and troubling indeed, but you're saying these are things that we're hearing. I'm not seeing it so far, Jonathan.
Right. What she is seeing, and what we're all seeing, is what a president does when they come into office. Now, it's true that President Trump is being more aggressive. Most people run for this office about shrinking government and then forget once they become the government. That's not the case here. I mean, he went and got someone who is famous for downsizing. He did that at X, and they are proceeding along those lines. What's curious about the protest of many of these members is that a lot of these voices were the same ones in the name of democracy that wanted to prevent voters from being able to vote for Donald Trump, who ultimately won both houses and a majority of votes. And now in the name of democracy, they're arguing that they should be able to slow down or stymie or even prevent some of the things that he ran on.
Think about that, okay? I mean, what Turley said is absolutely spot on. You have this team of people that are trying to basically suffocate Donald Trump and all his supporters. They wanted to make sure that he could not get elected under any circumstances. They failed over and over and over again. And now here we are coming out on the other side. And he's like, okay, I'm going to cut this. I'm going to cut that. I'm going to cut this. I'm going to cut that. And Doge is exposing every single bit of it. And it's gross, right? Like the spending is positively disgusting and gross, and they're your tax dollars. And we're finding this out. And then they're standing in the way of it? What a bunch of morons. I mean, just think about it, politically speaking, even. Stephen Miller, who's a special advisor, policy advisor to the president, and a really bright guy and understands this from a legal perspective and has spent the last 4 years understanding it and studying it. He was on CNN today saying, look, I realize you guys, you don't like it when the government isn't, dare I say, like paying its bills to you? I don't know. I mean, everything's come out with USAID, and I sort of wonder, how much is CNN getting? Is that why they were so perturbed? That's why they were so concerned that Donald Trump not win no matter what? Here's Miller.
I understand that even a temporary interruption in federal employment is a great crisis and catastrophe for you and for CNN. What the American people see is a government that is finally delivering a promise of accountability under President Trump. You want to have a conversation about transparency? Let me ask you a question. Do you have any idea where the $22 billion that the Department of Health and Human Services provided to illegal aliens under Joe Biden is right now? $22 billion with a B. That's enough to provide a free house to every homeless veteran in America. Where's the $22 billion? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. Joe Biden just spent it, and now it's gone. Transparency begins with having an accounting of where every federal dollar is spent. And God bless President Trump for leading this effort.
Like, why are they mad about that? Think about it. The only reason you'd be mad about it, right, is unless you're trying to protect some kind of corruption. Alex Karp, who is the CEO of Palantir, big tech company, he was on CNBC saying, look, I'm really disappointed in my party. I used to identify as a Democrat. I don't anymore. And this party, like, can't get out of its own way. They are on the wrong side of this issue. Dead wrong.
Look, what I don't like about what's going on, any of you really believe, what I don't like about what's going on is I just view this as, well, let's watch the Democratic Party commit suicide. And like, I've been a Democrat most of my life. I kind of view myself as outside it, but I don't like watching the Democrats just commit suicide. And what I see is most of the country doesn't really, at this point, given the fraud, waste, and abuse we know is there, 90% of the country is like, get rid of that fraud, waste, and abuse. And I just view this as yet another example of the progressive left boxing themselves into a suicide dance. Now, what the progressive left should be doing is saying, okay, Elon, you're clearly the most qualified person in the world to do something like this. We want to dialogue with you about how you're doing and what are you doing. I don't believe that's actually what happened. And again, I like Elon. I know I think he's obviously the most important builder in the world. And I just think, if you want to say my former side, I don't believe that they're actually engaging. I think it's like another dance where I'm supposed to say, of course, like whatever. It's like there's this one issue where and then you get boxed into you cannot solve the problem. And then I would say, what is the biggest problem in this society? Biggest problem in this society from my perspective is legitimacy of our institutions. Why aren't they legitimate? They're not legitimate because, okay, do any of you really believe that 99% of your taxpayer dollars are being spent? But last and not least, and probably arguably most importantly, there's two revolutions happening. One is transparency and one is AI. Okay, so why is it that we do not know where every penny of our money goes? Like, how do you explain that to people? And by the way, slightly more technically, what large language models do is you can go into the contracts and see exactly what happened. So in the past, we couldn't do this. Now we can. The right response is, we want this to happen. We want to happen. We want to be involved in the dialogue. The real response is, it feels like the people criticizing Elon don't want it to happen. And this is going to destroy those people.
Yes, right? Because if any of these people had a clue or were not corrupt, dare I say, they'd actually want all this exposed. I mean, Elon's going to save the taxpayers a lot of money. Why would you stand in the way of that? Except it's TDS, right? Trump derangement syndrome. They can't shake it. It's all they got, for God's sakes. This woman, Letitia James, has based her entire political existence on Trump derangement syndrome. She doesn't know how to how to do anything else other than to attack him. And so she's going back to the well. And guess what? The courts are telling her again, honey, you got no there. There's nothing there for you. And yet she has only one playbook.
Under my leadership, my office sued Donald Trump over 100 times. And the basis of all of that was Project 2025. So he cannot distance himself from something that he has attempted to implement when he was president of these United States. And we were successful 70% of the time. We were the firewall, Democratic attorney generals.
Yeah, well, you were really not successful on this one. And you had a judge that should have loved you, right? She didn't like Trump. She wants to help you out, Letitia, and you're just on the wrong side of the law. You got no basis for anything, but you were busy there during the last administration filing hundreds of lawsuits. And then when you had him leave office, you filed more, right? Because you wanted to bankrupt the guy. That was your mission. You politicized everything, and instead of taking care of your city, you just went after Trump. Think of how messed up that is, guys. I mean, and you know what? This was not lost on Pam Bondi. She's been noticing this for some time.
I think in New York, to specifically talk about New York and to talk about Attorney General Letitia James, instead of sitting in a courtroom going after Donald Trump on bogus civil fraud cases, she should be out on the streets of New York with all of law enforcement. She's the chief law enforcement officer in New York. She should be out there condemning this, stopping this, calling for the arrest of these people who are vandalizing police cars. There are cameras all over New York City. They can catch these people. Look what Mayor Giuliani did to clean up New York, Manhattan, when he was mayor.
Okay, but Letitia didn't want to, right? Because all she could do was think about and salivate over going after Trump. And this is the ABC News clip where she was like, I'm going to take his assets. If he doesn't have the money, with $500 million, she wants to charge the guy $500 million for something that is not illegal in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I'm still waiting on the appeals court, for goodness sakes. Court of Appeals, you know them, out of New York. Unbelievable. Judith Vale, who was representing Letitia James, they told her before she even spoke that she had no case. So where are they?
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated...
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
Okay, so she had no case. She had no case. We're still waiting on the Court of Appeals in New York to throw that one out. But Letitia James was going forward with everything she had. She wanted to seize his assets.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
That's what she wanted to do, seize his assets. She wanted to go right into Trump Tower and take it over because this is all she had, right? Think of the campaign.
He's called me venomous. We will fight back to your attempt to bring Trumpism to New York City. He's called me disgraceful. Of the fact that they stole the Supreme Court seat. called me radical. Listen, we know he's crazy. We know he doesn't have a sound mind. We know he's out of control. We know he's losing it. We know his days are numbered and we will come together. He's called
Well, now your days are numbered. Letitia James getting a big defeat, along with all the other attorney generals that joined her, as Judge Chutkan rejects calls from these Democrat attorney generals to get a temporary restraining order. She already had said, I really can't rule on this overall in terms of DOJ coming in and shutting down all your funding. She's punting on that one. So then they say, okay, can we get a temporary restraining order so at least they're not firing these people, etc.? And she said no. I mean, unbelievable. And Letitia's sitting there going, but wait, they can't turn off our funding? Like, that's New York funding. This is unconstitutional. How can they do this?
payments to the state of New York and to states all across this nation. It is unacceptable, unconstitutional, ultra-vires. They have exceeded their authority. And so it's important that attorneys general representing our respective states stand up and enforce the rule of law.
Okay, but here's the problem. You don't have any backing now from any court. And, I'll tell you, Tish, we should call this segment Trish versus Tish. You don't have a leg to stand on because here's the evidence. You're no better than Ilhan Omar, who they're looking to deport. Maybe that's a little bit of a misnomer. We'll talk about that because Brendan Gill, the congressman from Texas, is all over this with Ilhan Omar because she's trying to give these seminars and webinars showing people how you can ice out the feds. Letitia James is doing the exact same thing. Okay, the exact same thing, which puts her in violation of federal law. Here she is. New York has laws that protect immigrants and limit cooperation with federal enforcement efforts. Those laws should be followed by law enforcement officials in our state. So she's telling her law enforcement officials to do that. And yet, if they do that, they are directly in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4. The federal government's trying to come in and shore up this whole immigration thing. That is what Donald Trump was put in office to do, and he has the authority to do it, courtesy of, one, the Constitution, and second, the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution. Okay, so this is not that hard. This actually isn't a constitutional crisis of any sort. The law is really clear. Letitia just apparently doesn't understand it. I think she went to Harvard Law School. Maybe she skipped her constitutional law class. Here's the thing. Tish, they don't qualify for asylum. All these people that have come into New York that you're handing out $350 checks, the mayor put an end to that, you see, and they're really mad at him about that. And the hotels where you get daily maid service? Come on. $200 million going to a hotel that's actually owned by Pakistan? That would be the Roosevelt Hotel. They're in Midtown. Look, you have to qualify for asylum, okay? And if you don't qualify for asylum, then guess what? If you came into the country and you overstayed your visa, or if you just came into the country illegally, then you're here illegally. And that would make you in violation of the law because it's very clear cut. I've talked to you guys about this before, right? These are the qualifications for asylum. This is all spelled out. And unless you're going to change that, Letitia, you don't have a leg to stand on. Like, you have nothing to stand on. And yes, Pam Bondi can cut off all the money and Treasury can cut off all the money because you are not following the law. In the U.S., asylum is defined under 8 U.S.C. 1158 and aligns with the 1951 Refugee Convention and the 1967 Protocol. To qualify for asylum, you must be able to prove that you've been persecuted or you have a fear of persecution and that you are on protected grounds. In other words, that persecution needs to be based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or you're a member of a particular social group. So you can't just come here because you're seeking a better economic future, as much as some of these people there in New York City, like Tish James, would like to believe. No, it works a whole lot differently than that. You have to actually qualify for the asylum program. Quick shout out to 76 Research, my company, financial research company. I encourage you to check it out. Code word dollar, DOLLAR. Go to 76 Research. We get lots of picks, lots of information. You can subscribe to the 76 Report and get that for $1 a month right now for the first 2 months. Introductory offer. I encourage you to check it out.